smile from the past kept everyone in America up at night, because it was cold, twisted, and came from a mind that no one could quite figure out. Not because it was pretty. Richard Widmark was the person behind that smile. But what did Tommy Udo have in his eyes? A husband for more than 50 years who never left his wife's side, a brother who left the stage to take care of his paralyzed brother, an actor who used to study law but chose to play evil instead. He didn't go to Hollywood to become famous. He came to show that when it's really quiet, it can be louder than a scream. This man's real life was more interesting than any noir movie he ever was in. Now we're going to go back into the hidden parts of his life and heart. His birthday is December 26, 1914, and he was born in Sunrise Township, Minnesota. But he grew up and became the person he is today in the town of Princeton, Illinois, in the Midwest. When he was 3 years old, his grandmother Mary Barr would sneak him to early morning movie showings where he became enthralled with silent films where emotions were shown only through body language and eyes. This sparked the idea for his own intense but silent style that would later define him. As a teen, he spent a lot of time traveling with his traveling salesman father, Carl Henry Widmark. This taught him how to be flexible and strong inside. At the same time, his mother Ethel May paid for his schooling and became his only real support. He also got a part-time job at the movie theater, which let him watch movies for free and act out famous scenes in his garden, keeping a desire to act alive in the background. Widmark was hit hard emotionally when he went to Lake Forest College from 1932 to 1936 with the goal of becoming a lawyer. During his last year, his folks got a divorce. His father was a Lutheran, his mother was a Christian Scientist, and his grandmother was a devout Catholic. Their different religious views pushed him between them, forcing him to find his own way. He poured himself into the minds of his stage figures because of the pain in his family and his strong desire to rise above it. Widmark went to New York soon after finishing. He had a dream of working in theater and had learned a lot from having a rough childhood. As soon as Widmark got to New York in the late 1930s, the people who were auditioning him for March of Time liked him. Instead of the dry newspaper-like story that was expected, he put eerie pauses between each line, lowered his voice to a whisper when talking about sad scenes, and then suddenly sped up the emotion with a tense, compressed tone. This is a radio technique that has never been used before. This isn't a voiceover. This is a real actor, the producer said as he stood up and cheered. Right away, Widmark was asked to join the permanent cast of March of Time. This led to regular parts on Big Sister, Stella Dallas, and Front Page Frell. He worked on his singing skills on the radio, where there were no stage lights or visible cues. He was able to show complicated character psychology through sound alone. It was a hard but valuable experience that helped him improve his skills and set him up for his next big step, from Broadway to the big screen in Hollywood. Following a few years on the radio, Widmark moved to Broadway in 1943 and was in Kiss and Tell and Getaway Old Man. With only 13 shows under the direction of theater legend George Abbott, he made an impact with his sure confidence, perfect timing, and uncanny ability to build dramatic tension. By chance, director Darryl F. Zanuck was at an early screening of Kiss and Tell looking for a new face for the movie Kiss of Death. He was immediately captivated by how Widmark lowered his voice, blinked just once, and then burst into tears at the end. In another case, Widmark got a fever right before his last show, but his shirt was still stained with blood. He did his act so that neither the crowd nor his co-stars knew what was going on. Because he was professional and would do what it took, Zanuck asked him to do a screen test for the part that would change everything. I played Tommy Udo in Kiss of Death. Richard Widmark made his movie debut in 1947, when Zanuck, who was then working for 20th Century Fox, gave him the part of Tommy Udo. He was 33 years old at the time. Even though he was skeptical at first, director Henry Hathaway worked closely with Widmark during rehearsals to perfect timing, pacing, and the creepy calm before the storm delivery before shooting the most important scene. When the word action was called out, Widmark did the famous wheelchair push down the stairs. To make sure everyone was safe, the team had secretly put in a hidden track. The clattering wheels and that crazy laugh, a wide childlike grin soaked in evil ambition, stopped the whole set in its tracks and shocked people all over the country. Life magazine said it was the scariest scene in a movie. Fans of the noir genre said that even a simple "Hey buddy" from Widmark could make hearts skip a beat. He had a fascinating mix of innocent charm and explosive danger. Not only did that moment get him a 7-year deal with Fox, it also made him a famous anti-hero in film noir. Later, directors like Otto Preminger and Billy Wilder would make movies like his that were quiet but powerful. Widmark would later say that it was the first time he had really faced his own sadness. From then on, Tommy Udo's scary laugh will always be remembered in movie history. Right after Kiss of Death went big, Widmark showed that he wasn't just the king of bad guys, he was a flexible actor who could take on any role. In Yellow Sky 1948, he changed from playing a psychotic crazy man to playing Dude, a wild Western criminal who was full of bravado but had a rough, troubled soul. Gregory P.C. was always cool, but Widmark brought out every wild flicker in the guy's eyes and every defiant smirk. That's not all he was, a cruel criminal. He was a man who was very lonely and whose silences spoke volumes about the pain and passion that lay beneath the boldness. This performance made it clear that Widmark wasn't stuck in a typical role. Instead, he was a multi-layered character who could balance raw aggression with real human depth. After that, in Down to the Sea and Ships 1949, Widmark played an old sailor who led watchers through storms at sea with a warm voice and caring eyes. He didn't want to just act old, so he learned how to tie nautical knots, climb rigging, and steer the ship himself. When a strong wind blew off his hat, he chose to climb the deck and get it back without a stunt double. That spirit of hands-on commitment gave his character a realism that came through in even the smallest actions. It turned a simple story about fishing into a moving seafaring epic full of people. Under the direction of Elia Kazan, Widmark played Dr. Clinton Reed in Panic in the Streets 1950. Reed was a normal guy who was thrown into a plague outbreak in New Orleans. Widmark played a quiet hero, which was very different from the bad guys he played before. He had fire in his eyes as he ran through streets looking for the source of the infection, and his voice was tense and urgent in scenes that were meant to be scary. This part was a turning point because it showed how he could go from being a scary bad guy to a steady, soft-spoken hero. It also showed how much he could change, making people fear the disease spreading while admiring the character's unwavering resolve. Widmark worked with Marilyn Monroe for the first time in the 1952 movie Don't Bother to Knock. It was Monroe's big break. He played Jed Towers, a teacher who used to be a pilot and was sent to a hotel to watch a little girl. Monroe's character fell apart as she became lost in loneliness and broken memories, and Widmark held the chaos together with a calmly strong performance. Monroe messed up her lines during a screen test and broke down in tears, her eyes wide with fear. Widmark put his hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Just breathe slowly, I'll wait until you're ready." This helped Monroe calm down and set the stage for how sensitive their relationship would become on screen. Each time he gently grabbed her hand or told her in a firm voice to slow down her breathing, it showed how much he cared about her and how good he was at helping his co-stars. This showed that Widmark could shine with any top-notch talent in a subtle way. Widmark played Skip McCoy in Sam Fuller's 1953 play Pickup on South Street. Skip is a tough pickpocket with a fragile face and a deep-seated desire to be forgiven. He walked through the city's dark streets with cold eyes that sometimes flickered with sadness, which made him both scary and sad. Widmark perfectly tuned his act. McCoy was sharp and cruel when he planned something. He became kinder and more confused when he understood what friendship and conscience meant. Film noir fans weren't the only ones who felt moved by his careful mix of noir, anti-hero and aching humanity. It made people care about a criminal's quest to get his soul back. Widmark didn't just improve his acting ability with these parts. He set a standard for future artists by showing that he could play any role, from a cowboy to a sailor to a doctor to a troubled hoodlum. As the 1960s began, Widmark's fame grew even more thanks to two outstanding roles in big and dramatic movies. The Alamo 1960 was not only a big Western show, but it was also John Wayne's dream project that he worked on for more than 14 years. Wayne first planned to only have a small part in the movie so that he could focus on directing, but United Artists would only pay the $12 million budget if Wayne played the lead. 7 Oscar bids were made for the 70mm Todd AO format, which had a 202-minute roadshow version with an overture and an intermission. It made $20 million in its first year. The project started with research in Texas in 1946 and included site scouting in Panama in 19... It ended up being a new take on the Alamo story, different from D.W. Griffith's Martyrs of the Alamo or Man of Conquest, 1939, and proving that it is an American epic. Wayne thought about playing Sam Houston and later felt bad that he didn't play Colonel Travis instead, but in the end he felt most like himself as Davy Crockett. Widmark's performance as Jim Bowie brought together the spirit of sacrifice, patriotic speeches, and vast scenery to make the Alamo into a movie that shows how strong Americans are and how much they love freedom. In the 1961 movie Judgment at Nuremberg, Widmark played prosecutor Dan Haywood, a retired American judge who was in charge of the morally difficult trial of 4 Nazi judges who were responsible for sterilization policies and brutal purges after World War II. The movie took place 3 years after the first trials of Nazi leaders. Haywood during the Cold War, when both Germany and the Allies were trying to forget about the past, with a strong voice and a steady look. Widmark, Spencer Tracy, Marlene Dietrich, Judy Garland, and Maximilian Schell all gave very good speeches in tense courtroom scenes. Tracy's famous closing statement was filmed in a single take. On a budget of only $3 million, the movie made $16 million around the world. It was nominated for 11 Oscars and won 2, including Best Actor for Schell. Judgment at Nuremberg was praised by both critics and audiences.
It was later preserved by the U.S. Library of Congress for its cultural, historical, and aesthetic value, and AFY named it one of the 10 best courtroom plays ever. Along with The Alamo, the part made Widmark an A-list star in Hollywood in the early 1960s, proving that his work had both heroic and intellectual weight. Widmark did more than just act, though. He was set on getting full control over the progress of his projects and picking the scripts he would use. He and his wife Jean Hazelwood officially started Heath Productions in May 1954. The name comes from the fact that Hazelwood and Widmark had just enough money to start their first solo project. In 1957, Heath made his debut in Otto Premier's St. Joan, and Widmark played the Dauphin. This was a smooth transition from the artist's idea to the finished production. The company later co-produced the Cold War spy movie The Secret Ways, 1961 and again 1972 to 1973. This showed that Heath Productions wasn't afraid to put money into a lot of different types of projects, from historical epics to legal plays, and from independent films to serialized TV, with the idea that you should pick out the story first and then figure out how to make it. Heath Productions was brave enough to deal with touchy issues and ran as a lean, adaptable business. This protected Widmark's artistic vision, kept him from falling into the trap of typecasting, and increased his power not only in front of the camera, but also behind the scenes. It also solidified the authority of an actor-founded company during the tightly controlled studio era in Hollywood. Widmark did well in more than just movies. He also made a big name for himself on TV. He was nominated for an Emmy in 1971 for his performance as President Paul Devlin in the miniseries Vanished, which was based on Fletcher Neal's book about a plan to kidnap the U.S. president. The show's gripping political themes made it one of the most watched miniseries of its season, even though it didn't make any money at the box office. People liked how calm Widmark was during the storm, especially when he called for help from the Oval Office. Director Paul Wenos did a great job of making viewers feel like bad things were about to happen in just a few minutes. Then from 1972 to 1973, Widmark came back in 23 episodes of the show Madigan, which was based on the 1968 movie of the same name. About 15 to 18 million people watched each 60-minute episode, and it was often one of the top 20 shows in its time spot. With guest stars like John Cassavetes and Diana Muldaur, the show let Widmark show how intensely he could feel different things. Unfortunately, Madigan only had 2 seasons because of high production costs. However, it was praised for being realistic and having strong performances, proving that Widmark was one of the few movie stars who could really play a role. Did very well after moving to the small screen. In real life, Widmark was best when he was playing quiet parts like husband, father, and devoted partner. On screen he often played scary characters, best friend. In his time at Lake Forest College, Widmark was known as a loner, who was busy with football, debate, the Honor Society, and the Drama Club. He also worked full-time at Marshall Fields as the head of the men's clothing area. That's where he met Gan Hazelwood, a theater student under his, being supervised as a teaching help. Gan often asked Widmark for help with tests, and then pretended to fail some of them to keep people from figuring out what was going on. Even though the faculty told them they couldn't be together as teachers and students, they talked on the phone behind everyone else's backs to keep the peace in the department. Tommy Udo's scary laugh used to be heard in movie halls. On April 5, 1942, a warm afternoon, Richard Widmark married Jean Herzlwood. That relationship in college quickly grew into a family. 3 years later, in 1945, they had a daughter named Anne Heath. During Widmark's big steps on Broadway and in Hollywood, their small home became a safe place for support. Widmark and Jean's marriage was built on respect and understanding, not flashy behavior like many Hollywood couples. Jean often went on location scouts with her husband and gave him feedback on scripts. She was the only one who fully knew how fast he worked. Anne remembered that one time, my mom took scripts into the bathtub to talk about with Dad, instead of chasing cocktail lights. Jean began to forget lines in the late 1980s. She was told she had Alzheimer's in 1992. Widmark put all of his projects on hold when he was over 70 years old to take care of his wife. He kept track of her medications, read her scripts out loud to help her remember them, and walked with her through the yard. Anne remembered how her dad changed the house into a small hospital. On her good days, he kept it warm and comforting though. Jean died in the arms of her husband on March 22. After 2 years, Widmark married actress Susan Blanchard again in a small wedding. They lived a simple life together in Roxbury, Connecticut, until Widmark's death on March 24.
Richard Widmark showed how to be loyal and devoted to your family. People remember him on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Western Performers Hall of Fame not only as a scary actor but also as the main character in a simple but honest love story. Proof that love and duty last even when no one is looking. Widmark was known for his love for his younger brother Donald as well as his care for Jean in her last years, which included writing down her medicines and taking her for gentle evening walks. Donald Widmark was a pilot in the 445th Bomb Group of the Army Air Corps. He was shot down 3 times over Europe and was captured by the Germans and held as a prisoner of war for more than a year. In November 1944, Richard heard that his brother had gone missing. At the time, he was making a name for himself on Broadway in Kiss Them for Me. In the early summer of 1945, Richard and Jean read in the Princeton County Republican that the war was almost over and American prisoners of war were being freed. This was right before he was put on stage. He was shocked to see Donald show up in person as he ran backstage. He hugged his brother and then went back to performing right away while Jean got ready to give birth to their daughter Anne Heath on July 25, 1945, Donald's birthday. When Donald got back to California from the war, he had serious injuries to his back, migraines that made him unable to function, and a brain tumor that needed to be cut out in part. His speech had been taken away and he was partly paralyzed by 1951. Without thinking twice, Widmark moved in with his brother and paid for all of his medical bills, from surgery to physical therapy and medicine. He hired experts, put in movement aids and set aside a whole room in the house for Donald to rest and get better. It wasn't just duty, Widmark explained, it was a brotherly tie that could not be broken. Don died on December 22, 1955, and was buried in Los Angeles at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. At the same time, Gail and Max Kastner, two childhood friends, went back to Princeton to help build a civilian airport, but the P-camps kept coming back to haunt them. That event gave Widmark the strength to keep going through his amazing career on stage and in movies. After finishing his last projects, Richard Widmark stepped out of the public eye and settled down at his quiet home in Roxbury, Connecticut. In his later years, he stayed quiet and spent time with his family and reading history books. He would sometimes joke that he wasn't allowed to charge across the screen no longer, but in 2003 he fell and broke a cervical spine while going up and down stairs at home. This made him almost completely reliant on a walker. The injury caused constant muscle spasms, pain, and finally muscle loss, problems with circulation and breathing problems. During his last years, Susan Blanchard hired private nurses and put up steps all over the house to make it easier for him to move around. He kept reading books and diaries, but his repeated bouts of pneumonia made him weaker and weaker. On March 24, 2008, Richard Widmark died at home at the age of 93 from effects from pneumonia that could not be cured. His unique anti-heroic film language, in which enemies were shown not only through action but also through looks and still moments, left a lasting impression on generations of actors who came after him. Famous co-workers like Henry Hathaway, John Ford, and Sam Fuller said he was the epitome of professionalism. Marilyn Monroe said it was his inner charm that inspired her on set. His work was recognized at the Western Performers Hall of Fame in 2002 and on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 6800 Hollywood Boulevard. He made more than 60 movies ranging from noir to epics that have been found over and over again in books, interviews, and documentaries. They make us think of a man who always put art and family ahead of fame. The power of silence is shown by what Richard Widmark left behind. His angry look in Kiss of Death, his scary bad guys, and his unshakable love for his family. He has been in more than 60 movies and has a star on the Walk of Fame. He is also known as a Western Performers Hall of Fame alum. His intense but quiet personality set the tone for the anti-hero archetype that would last for generations. What about his life or impact moved you the most? Let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next interesting story.